Hey everybody, you're watching Bourbon Battles. My name's Joe and our special guest,
Stephen Eds, Log Still Distillery.
So stick with us to see what this stuff's all about. Okay, like we said, we're here with Stephen from Log Still Distillery. I'm going to let him take it away. This is a first episode of this type where we have a representative from a distillery in the Bourbon Battles studio. I already told Stephen this, but Chattanooga Whiskey is going to be here soon to do this same kind of thing. Stephen and Log Still were really the first brand that we started working with back when you first started working at Log Still, right?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago.
So yeah, we're very excited to have Stephen here. We've done a lot of reviews on this stuff. I'm going to let him go through it. I'm going to have a drink. You going to have a drink with me?
I will absolutely have a drink.
Can I have some of this?
Absolutely.
We'll let Stephen tell you about it when he gets around to it, but I've never had this before.
Brought something special for you.
What are you having?
All right, I'm going to have the 5th District Series 2.
That
is the one on the end.
This one. Oh, that's the one that I really liked.
This is our 5th District Series 2. It's an 8-year toasted barrel finish, 100 proof bourbon. Those of you who probably watch this are very familiar with Fred Minnick. Fred does his top 100 whiskeys of the year, and then he does a 4-hour live blind tasting.
And he tastes them, and he tastes all 100 now,
all 100,
and ranks them.
And then ranks the final 25.
Okay.
I never thought I would watch a grown man for 4 hours drink bourbon on YouTube, but it was an amazing experience.
Well, you watch me for 12 minutes at a time, right?
Well, I think what we're gonna do next year is we're gonna YouTube us watching Fred drink bourbon for 4 hours. So, just make a complete meta experience.
So you think I should go back and watch that?
It's fascinating, and Fred does a tremendous job, and he lays it all out. But he ranked this number 40 out of 100. And if you go on Fred's website and look at the top 100, a lot of great brands that finished 41 to 100.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but he has a real affinity towards. What's the mash bill? That's not a wheated mash bill?
No, it's a high rye.
So there's certain criteria for that list, right? It's very interesting. So look it up, Google it. It's not easy to even qualify.
Yeah, and so. This also won a Barleycorn Award gold medal last year. So this is something we're really proud of. And what makes this special is you get the smokiness from the toasted barrel finish. You get a little bit of sweetness. You get that high rye. When I do tastings, I will tell people I will give them 3 flavor profiles to pull from. They will always tell me 3 more that they get. The more it sits in your mouth, just the better it tastes. It's a really complex. It's an 8 years at 100 proof. It drinks a lot less than that. We have all of our offerings are fantastic. This is my personal favorite. It's just has a great complexity.
I think you and I had this conversation. Had you been in this room before?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, like a lot of this stuff down there in the corner, right? That's stuff that's sent to me, kind of like you guys give me stuff, right? Like there's not much out of them. I haven't touched your toasted. That was all from like the first week and a half, 2 weeks I had it. That's a lot for me because I have too much stuff to taste. So I couldn't go to your single barrel yet. I had to taste it because you enticed me to try it while you're talking about it.
Well, these for those of you who watch this who are out of state Indiana, Bourbon Outfitters does online fulfillment.
Okay.
You can go in, go on the website.
I'll put the website on the screen there.
Okay. Go in, type in your zip code. They will tell you they can deliver to your address. So again, even if you don't find it in your local retail shop, that's something that you can order online.
We usually don't talk about price, Stephen, but what's that about?
It's about $100.
$100 a bottle? Yeah.
And again, for good, solid 8-year bourbon, I think, you will get your money's worth out of it. So 5th District is named for the 5th Federal Taxing District. So where Log Still Distillery is, which is the southern tip of Nelson County, Kentucky, about 15 minutes south of Bardstown. Where the current distillery is now, pre-prohibition, there used to be 11 distilleries within a 6-mile radius. And that was in the 5th Federal Taxing District. And during that time, the government would put offices at each of the 11 distilleries so they could collect taxes on the barrels before they shipped out. Probably the most popular office, I'm sure, in all the distilleries was the government guy in there. So the 5th District series can be a rotating series. The second series, named after the FM Head Distillery, which is on the grounds of where the current distillery is. The first one was the Cold Spring Distillery. Cold Spring was started by J.B. Dant. There's actually a cold spring that runs through Log Still property. The distillery was on the other side of that. Those of you might know the name J.B. Dant because J.B. Dant went on to start Yellowstone. So, a lot of history involved with the distillery.
So I don't know if you caught it. Last week I released a video, the history of the Uncle Nearest, right?
Yeah.
So these stories are amazing to me. So, right, the Dants who own Log Still now, and you mentioned a Dant owned Yellowstone at one time, which is now owned by a Beam, but they're all related, right?
If I remember this correctly, if I'm wrong, it will be in the flipping, but Limestone Branch, Yellowstone, owned by Stephen Paul Bean. Stephen Paul Bean's great grandmother and Wally Dant grandfather have maybe switched.
Which is one of the owners now.
Yes, we're brother and sister.
Gotcha.
So the Dants and the Beans, very intertwined, going back, 200 years, kind of to the emergence of Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah.
And so the Dant family, Wally Dant is J.W. Dant III. His great-great-great-grandfather was J.W. Dant, which you still see their bourbon on the shelf. Now the family sold it in the 1940s, switched hands a couple times.
So it's produced by Heaven Hill now.
Heaven Hill owns it now. So, we don't have any affiliation with the J.W. Dant brand or Heaven Hill Distillery. Great people. Brett Holderson does great work with Heaven Hill in this area. A lot of respect for him, but we want to make sure that we're creating our own legacy with Log Still, but we appreciate the family history of the Dants. Again, going back almost 200 years.
It's so cool to me. We were talking about different distilleries before we hit record, right? You hear my dog going batshit crazy. So we were talking about that. You start digging into the history, and a lot of these distilleries have it. Now you're a new distillery, newish, right? Newish. But just seeping with history because the family lineage and all that. And I really want you to talk about the distillery. I mean, I've not been there, and I'm going to start bugging you. We're going down there. And we're going to do an episode.
Absolutely.
And I want to smoke a cigar with your boss and get into some of these old stuff.
I don't
know if he smokes.
He does, I believe. The great thing about what they say about bourbon is, every great bourbon has a great story behind it. We have about 20.
Yeah.
So, the name Log Still Distillery came out of the original design of how the bourbon was created, taking a poplar log, cutting it in half, hollowing it out, binding it back together, and running copper tubing up, creating what was known as the log stilling.
So they made a still in a log.
They made a still in a log because they couldn't afford to buy a still back then.
Right.
So Monk's Road, the name, if you go to our distillery, a mile up the road is the Abbey of Gethsemane.
Yes.
Which is the oldest continually operating monastery in the U.S.
Yes.
Sits on 3,000 acres that was donated by the Dant family almost 200 years ago. So there's a family connection there. And the road that runs in front of the Abbey is called Monk's Road. So, again, connecting that piece of the history. And there's just a lot, everything's connected going back to the great Catholic migration of the late 1700s from what was in Maryland that brought Hazel Baden, that brought Elijah Craig, brought some of these, a lot of these guys into Catholic families into central Kentucky.
So when they brought that over, were they more accustomed to? Were they all rye whiskey makers, and then they discovered corn?
I think
Is
they
that
discovered,
correct?
yeah, they discovered the aging process too.
Okay.
And I think uh, what you have is I think Elijah Craig is credited with being the one that really
The father of
the
bourbon,
father,
which is totally false.
and which is
Probably.
every good story probably has a half truth in it. But if
Exactly.
it makes for a great story,
Keep it.
keep it. What they say, when legend becomes fact, print the legend.
That's
So
right.
there's a lot of that involved here. But what we have down at Log Still is a 300-acre whiskey Disneyland.
I
So
love that you use that.
well,
I haven't seen it, but I've heard you've told me so much about it. And please continue.
what Wally did was, again, he purchased 300 acres of that was still in the Dant family, and we're 15 minutes south of Bardstown. In that area of Kentucky, that's a long way. So what Wally wanted to do was create different reasons to come down, other than doing the tour and dipping your finger in the kettle and
The thing
visiting
that
the
every
tasting room.
single distillery does.
Yeah. So on our property, we have 6 bed and breakfast houses. 3 of them go back to the 1800s. One was Wally's grandparents' house. One was the house that Charles Dant, who's the third Dant, uh, spent his first 9 years in. They spent $1 million refurbishing because it had run down considerably. Uh, they have a 20,000 square foot conference and event center called the Legacy. They have weddings, uh, business conferences. The Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame ceremony was there this year.
Oh wow.
It's a beautiful, gorgeous facility. I said 20,000 square feet. Then if you go to the tasting room, you walk out the door, you walk into the amp, which is our 2,300 seat outdoor concert venue.
And big names.
This year we've got Alabama, we've got Travis Tritt, we've got CeeLo Green, we've got Warrant, Lita Ford, and Nelson. For people my age, I remember definitely seeing them back in the day.
We're gonna have to talk. I like Alabama and Travis Tritt.
Oh, and we're you can go to the logstilldistillery.com/the amp and see the concert lineup. We're adding to it quite a bit, but again, you're on the side of a hill, looking around on the stage, not a bad seat in the house,
And intimate.
and
You
intimate.
said 2,300 seats.
Yeah,
Yeah, they don't get no better than that.
no, it doesn't at all. So
Better book now if you want a room, right?
book now, definitely. And 12-acre stock fishing lake, the walking trail.
So you're telling me I can drive down there. You could literally stay in Louisville and have it's not that far.
45 minutes.
Yeah. And go on the Bourbon Trail, stop at your place, do a tasting, buy a bottle of some of this stuff, and go fishing while I'm there. And you have a hiking trail, right?
Yep.
Which really appeals to me. And there's even more.
There's even more along with the trails, the tasting room. You do the full tour. You get a sense of the history. There's a water tower that's on campus that was built in the 1930s that they thought they were going to have to tear down. That they got up and realized the rust had preserved the metal. They were able to refurbish it. It provides water for like the fire stuff. It doesn't provide
For the distillery or for the town?
For the distillery.
Okay.
But the lake provides distillate for the distilling, and it's fed by the cold springs that run throughout the property. Our corn comes from a field by a family that's right next to the property. We try to keep everything as localized as possible because, again, we're recognizing
as grain to glass as you can get moving forward.
As much as we can. And we have produced in a year and a half over 30,000 barrels. So we've got 3 rick houses built and building a 4th.
A lot of what we see is contract distillate, right?
It is.
You're not old enough yet.
Because you're not old enough yet. I will catch people when I do tastings that say that, we're almost 3 years old. And then we talk about our 4-year small batch wheated bourbon. And they look at me and say, the math didn't add up. Well, our 4-year small batch wheated bourbon, this is kind of our flagship.
It's so good.
Contracted. It's out of Kentucky. The 5th district is sourced out of Kentucky. So, this is Kentucky bourbon. Our 4-year small bags weeded, for me, when I do tastings, and I've done over 100 of them or so, for people who are saying, I'm just getting started into bourbon, I'm really kind of learning, the weeded is the way to go. It's a really easy drinking, approachable bourbon. It's had a sweetness from the wheat. You get some vanilla, you get some dried cherry, but you also, for 94 proof, again, drinks a lot lower.
Is that age stated? Probably not.
4 years.
4 years. Okay, very good.
So
if you know anything about, we get so wrapped up in these age statements, and we need to relax on that a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like there's a 16-year-old whiskey up there. It's one of my favorite whiskeys in the world. I typically don't like that. I just did a video on 2 12-year whiskeys. You don't have to have these super age things, and depending on how you're doing it, right? And I have my suspicions where this might come from. What's the retail on that?
It runs $40.
$40.
40 to 45, maybe a little less depending on where you buy it. Bourbon Beyond Music Festival last year, they had 40 different brands, had tents set up. People could go different tents, try the brands, go on to the app and vote for their favorite. Monks Road weeded, one of the People's Choice Ascot Award again. And then Fred Minnick came up and did a blind tasting of the final 5, and just finished right behind Old Forester 100. So,
what's the proof on that?
94.
Okay, so what I'm going to do,
yeah.
So Steven's going to stick around. We're going to film another episode. I hope he can stay.
I can stay. I talk too much.
We're going to do a blind battle, right? Like we always do. And there's a drawer over there, and you'll see it soon enough. And you do have a product in there, and I really hope you don't pull it, because
if I'm wrong, then
you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
So, and there's probably only 12 in there, so you got a 1 in 12 chance of getting fired today.
We'll find out. So while you're doing that, let me a couple other things. First of all, gins are making a comeback. They have outpaced vodka, whiskey, and tequila in restaurants in growth the past couple years. For the younger generations, the older generation, they are locked into their Tanqueray, their Bombay, and that's fine. For younger generations, they are looking much like they did vodka a few years ago, of just unique flavor combinations and just really getting into it. This is our bourbon barrel finished gin, finished 6 months in our weeded bourbon barrel. But then we add, in addition to that, we have botanicals. We had cinnamon, coriander, cranberry, nutmeg. It is the most wholly unique gin you've ever had. I have converted so many gin haters, and myself was one of them, who I didn't drink gin for 30 years leading up to this, but it adds such a unique complexity to it. It has the sweetness from the bourbon barrel. It also has the botanicals. It has spices.
Not overly oaky.
Not overly junipery. And
yes.
What I find is people who don't like gin, they don't like the Christmas tree taste. This is a phenomenal gin. This also won a Barleycorn Award gold medal. I encourage you, if you find one, make an old fashioned with it.
So it's funny you mentioned that. I bought that for my wife for Valentine's Day last week. She's getting into gin. She likes making these craft cocktails at home, right? I'll call them high-end cocktails because they're expensive as shit. So I can go out and drink like Knob Creek or Maker's Mark, whatever, cheap, right? She's got to have these craft cocktails that are $48. That's not true. But she's getting into this. So I bought that for her for Valentine's Day because I love your brand. And
you're a good husband, obviously.
I'm a good husband. Yeah, hopefully she could probably hear us. So the first drink I made for her was an old fashioned. I had no idea that was even a thing. And she loved it.
And it is. I had one made for me a couple months after I started, just out of the blue. And I tried it and went, holy cow. Because again, you get the sweetness from the bourbon.
It was
also
good.
Get those spices. It blends with the citrus from the bitters. It's a fantastic cocktail to make. And again, it's something you take to a party and people will say, what is that? Never had anything like it.
And this bad boy right here, this is the weeded. Am I pointing at the right one? It makes for a great old fashioned.
It does as well. It really does, with the vanilla and the dried cherry kind of blends in as well. So
I'm not a cocktail drinker. This is my cocktail.
Yeah.
But I think, and I won't get it right, I actually think the one in the back of your Rattle and Snap would make a fantastic old fashioned, because it's got that, I'm not going to get this right, those barrel tannins and some of that youth that kind of gives that punch that I actually like in a cocktail.
It does. These are Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskeys. Now, Wally Dant lived in Nashville for 22 years before he bought the distillery. He wanted a Tennessee whiskey in his portfolio. So this is Tennessee whiskey with a little Kentucky touch. Again, Rattle and Snap used to be an old pre-Civil War game of chance. You would shake a handful of beans in a hand, give the rattle, you'd snap them into a box, and it was kind of like craps. We've researched it. We can't figure out how the game was scored, but again, it adds just an extra layer of kind of history. That's why it says on the side,
Beautiful packaging.
And it's for Tennessee whiskeys. And again, you may have seen this. I've seen this in the past year or so, that bourbon lovers are starting to explore out into the Tennessee whiskeys. Because it's you tried all the bourbon. You want to see what else is out there. And this is the 4 and 8 year just gives a nice bold expression. The 8 year has a little bit of banana taste to it.
Do you know if it's true? That tells me who makes it, or at least makes my gears wander. Right? It's funny you say that. Do you know? You made me lose my train of thought.
Well, I'll tell you.
Is it charcoal filtered? That's what I was going to say.
It's.
I assume it is.
Yes. To be Tennessee whiskey, you have to go through the Lincoln County process. Yeah, it's official Tennessee whiskey. This was distilled in Columbia. So that's the only question I always get asked is it Dickel?
Well, I was just getting ready to say, I don't know who makes it.
Yeah.
You won't tell me.
Yeah.
He says he doesn't know, and I call bullshit. But what I will say, it's not crazy minerally, which tells me that it's not Dickel.
Yeah.
Which is either you love Dickel or you hate it. If you hate Dickel, don't be afraid to try this.
That's right. And I said Dickel is very polarizing because of the mineral. But what I always say, and I'll expand this into whiskey, is what I tell people when I do tastings is there are no wrong answers in bourbon. Everybody has their own palate, their own preferences, what they like, what they don't. It's okay. People say with the mineral, oh, I love Dickel, oh, I hate Dickel. That's fine. That's what your own personal preference is.
That's right.
The joy in bourbon, and what I love about being in this industry, is the willingness to try.
Not everybody's going to like this.
No,
I love it. I think it's amazing, and
this is our single barrel pick. We've got it in a few places around the Indianapolis area, but people come down to the distillery. They sit through. They do a tour. They sit through our pick process. Caleb Cecil is our single barrel program manager. Came to us from Lux Row. I'm telling you, he's fantastic. He will pull samples, anywhere from 117 to 125, line them up and let people get a chance to pick them out. We have the Giant Eagle corporate people down.
Oh yeah,
and they were huddling afterwards and doing all this, and he looked at me and said, we've done 138 barrel picks. We have trouble most of the time picking one we like. This one we're having trouble picking one we don't. And almost everyone I've done has kind of had similar experiences. So this is a 5 year as opposed to 4 year, but
it's weeded, correct?
It's weeded
at barrel proof.
But boy, everyone I've had has such a nice complexity of flavors.
Hey, let's talk my old buddy over at Sobro, Lou, into doing one of those.
I think Lou would love. I'd love to have Lou down.
Yeah, the whole co-op. Maybe I get invited, come down.
I'd love to have you.
Yeah, you hear that, Lou?
I can tell you about Log Still until you're there and until you see it. You can't wrap your head around it. So that's what makes it amazing. And the people are what make it amazing. From Wally Dant, Lynn, Charles Dant on down, the single nicest group of people I've ever been around.
So I've done 6 to 10 videos on your product over the last 2 years, right? Different things, some short videos, some long videos, and everything in between. Wally and all 3 of them have commented or shared or done something, and I think that's really cool. And I really appreciate that. And where did Wally go to college?
Purdue University.
Boy,
class of 1985.
They're probably going to drop out of number 2 this week after that horrible showing at Ohio State yesterday.
Yeah, but Wally told me when I started, he said, tell everyone I went to Purdue. And I said, I will every place but Bloomington.
Don't say it there.
In Bloomington, I told him he went to Purdue Community College in Texas.
You know IU sucks, right?
I grew up in Kentucky, so
So
I let you guys find it out.
Here's a trivia question for you.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever said this on here. My wife, if she can hear me in there, she's literally going to come through that door and smack me, and you're going to fall over when we fall. So, my kids go to Purdue, both of them. One's getting ready to be a doctor, have a doctorate degree from there. Super proud of that. But I did not go to Purdue, and neither did my wife. Do you know where I went to school?
I do not.
I went to multiple establishments. So I have a degree from Ivy Tech Community College.
Absolutely.
And I also have certificates from Harvard University.
There you go.
So I went to Harvard.
Well,
does that surprise you? You're like, you dumbass hillbilly. You didn't go to Harvard? I did.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I wish I'd have gone to Purdue. It's a great school. Love that. And yeah, it's really cool. And the guy, Stephen Beam, that runs Limestone, went to Purdue as well, right?
That's a good question.
I think they did. And they're like cousins, right? And they're about the same age and all that. Yeah. So very good. Purdue, boiler up. They're going to win it all here in March. So we have gone over a long way. Do you have anything else you want to wrap this up with?
Go to logstildistillery.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We post a lot of things on there, a lot of cool recipes, a lot of stuff from the facility, concert announcements for the AMP. Definitely, we're a family-owned distillery. We have a lot of cool things happening, and we'd love you to don't take our word for it. Try it yourself, and hope you love us like I love the product.
So here's what I tell everybody.
Yeah.
A, when you're on the Bourbon Trail, you got to check it out. I mean,
absolutely.
You're so close. I mean, you're close to Maker's Mark. You're close to Limestone Branch. You're close to Wild Turkey. You're close to everything.
Yeah.
Anything in Louisville, you're close enough to. You need to pop in, see it for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then do me a favor. Some of this stuff's not cheap. Whiskey's not cheap.
Sure.
Pick you up one of the weeded and see if you like it.
Start there.
If you have a whiskey collection, just grab one. They're $40.
And the 4-year Rattle Snap runs about 30, 35. And this runs about 30. So yeah.
Try that. If you like it, then grab one of the other ones.
Yeah.
So hey, here's what we like to say: drinking bourbon is supposed to be fun. Do it with your friends. Do it responsibly. But don't drink and drive. See you next time.
If you drink, don't drive. Do the watermelon crawl.